Hey, what's up? What's up? So today we're going to be talking about the Nairobi Film Festival. It's happening. It opened on 17th of October. It's going to be running up to 27th of October. If you're watching this and you're a foreigner, you usually watch my videos. I'm not talking about your ordinary movies that you find in your theaters, but movies like the Battle of Laikipia, I can see that coming on a random streaming service. Shimoni, I can see it maybe happen. Mystery of Waza, I can see you watching that if you are looking for an African animated movie. So if you're watching me and you are a foreigner, just hang around, you may learn something new. So I'm going to be talking about I'm just going to touch on the opening ceremony. I'm going to be reviewing the Battle of Laikipia, Shimoni, and the Mystery of Waza. Those are three productions that I saw during the festival, and I felt the need to talk about them. Now, the festival is going on up to the 27th of October 2024, and there are already some movies that I've seen which I think are pretty interesting, and they go, they're still art films, they're still festival films, but there are one or two movies that are pretty entertaining. So if you're in Nairobi, make time to actually go catch them. So let's just go into it. Nairobi Film Festival 2024. Love the location, the fact that it was outside instead of the lobby whereby you're just crumbled inside there and it's stuffy and stuff. It was in the open air. There was a huge tent and there was a lounging area, so you could just sit down if you wanted to sit down, and you had the the standing areas. There was a drink area, and the food court was very close. So if you are shy and you felt the need to actually not talk to anyone, you could just walk out, go stand outside and pretend you're looking at Ngong Road, or you could go to the food court and go grab something to eat. Now, I got to meet a lot of people. Some conversation went very, very well, like with Elfanas Njora. Some went down south with Eugene Bugo, which was all on me. Some never happened, like with Eric Wenaina. I really wanted to talk to Jennifer Gatero, missed the opportunity. I thought I saw Tosh. I also had a very good conversation with Likarion Wenaina. Very short conversation, but a very good one. And I just saw a lot of people. I saw Felipa from Subterrane, easily identifiable, perfect casting for the show. Anyway, got to see her with Angela Wenaina. So I saw a lot of people, and I thought that was a great opportunity for people to meet up. And then the speeches came in, and I had something to say about that, because I think the event organizers should have hired a stand-up comedian to be a mini MC, someone to just pop in during the beginning to get people's attention, to bring them in, because you had the classic setting of a school class whereby you have the front row, the second row, very attentive. The last row are just happy to see each other, so they're still drinking and talking. And so you get that if you're not like super in front, you don't really, you're not really focused on, or whatever is being said. So I thought they should have hired preferably a stand-up comedian. I usually push for stand-up comedians to be MCs because they know how to manipulate people, they know how to play into situations. And I'm not talking about Akina MC Jesse or Akina Churchill or Akina Jogosh. No, I'm talking about proper stand-up comedians who are, who have mastered the art of presenting comedy that is outside the Kenyan tropes. People who are like super smart in reading a situation and actually coming up with some really intelligent stuff to deal with that particular situation. I'm saying that because I've seen stand-up comedians do it, and they're really, really good. And I thought this particular event could have benefited from just one person, one stand-up comedian to come there and get the attention of everyone and to bring everyone in, So I thought that was pretty interesting. That was the only issue that I had with that particular segment. There were a couple of speeches. Sheba did her thing, Sheba Heist. Then Billy Marcia did his own thing, gave his own speech. There was a small award. There was a guy from the European Union, a representative from the European Union. I think they had something to do with the festival. I'm not really sure. I don't want to go into that. But there was that. Then there was an award ceremony whereby, I can't remember his name. I'm not going to lie to you guys. There was an award ceremony. Some people came up, said something. And then we were now told to go in. Now, going in is where, when everyone was just flowing into the theater, I think that's where I saw Jennifer Gatero, missed the opportunity to talk to her. Then we go in. I was confident I was going to sleep. I was so exhausted that day that I could not wait to get into the theater. Now, I've been waiting to watch the Battle for Laikipia, but I was so exhausted. I had a migraine. I was on coffee. Coffee was wearing out. I'm just like, just put me in that dark room. I just want to sleep. You know, that kind of a situation. So as we went in, so now the review of Battle for Laikipia, I thought this documentary is an example of show don't tell. I think I wrote that in my article. The principle of show don't tell is it's represented very well in this particular documentary, and it goes into the editing and the direction, but especially the editing, because you know, editing is using a cut to tell a story. It can be a very quick cut, or it can be a long take and then cut very late. And one of the things that I thought was effectively done is that the documentary consistently showed you stuff. They weren't telling you, yes, there is exposition during the second and third act where now news comes in and there's a lot of talking between the community to just get you, to give you an idea of what actually is going on. But the first act, there are a lot of just quiet, no music, just wide shots, establishing shots, or just B-rolls, just a wide shot, and it's capturing something rather than someone telling you, oh, we have this problem. No, they're actually showing you stuff. So I thought that was genius. I thought the idea to actually now hold a scene. You know, we don't get that in movies these days, thanks to, I think, Born Ultimatum, the Born Identity movies, whereby there's a cut after every second. This is different in that it holds a scene. And I like that because, number one, it captures three things that I thought were the MVPs of this story. Now, this Battle of Laikipia is an exploration of two communities, the people within these two communities and this conflict that they have. It focuses on the characters. We get to follow some from the beginning up to the end. But for me, my interpretation of what I was looking at, I thought the three main things that were captured well, number one by the cinematographer, and number two by the editor and director, was the land, number one, because Laikipia is very, very beautiful, and it makes sense for people to do whatever they were doing, to fight for it. You know, it makes sense for some people to have such big number in terms of, this is spoiler free, I'm not going to tell you everything. It makes sense for them to have such a large number. Let me just put it that way. It makes a lot of sense if you look at some of the shots. You look at some of the shots and you go like, yes, I get it. I get why you're doing this. I totally understand why you're doing this based on some shots. And second thing, it shows you just how dynamic the environment is, the ecosystem. You know, the animals, the plants, you know, the way it evolves when certain elements are introduced. So the dynamic of the land is captured very, very well. The other thing that I thought was the MVP was Mother Nature, because I'm not going to spoil it for people, but Mother Nature plays a big role within this particular story. I don't want to talk about climate change because that's a buzzword, but basically think of Mother Nature, the impact of. And Mother Nature cuts across, because now we go into the third thing that I thought was very powerful. The third MVP was the livestock, because my goodness, you see, for you and myself, you know, iPhones are like we are attached to our phones and our laptops and our tablets because they actually have a heavy influence on who we are and what we do in life. But there are a group of people there who just, their life depends on cattle, you know, and you get to see that. And the cattle, for me, I thought, as much as we have all these people following these people with their own drama, just watching the cattle and the story around the cattle, for me, I thought was pretty interesting. You have some very beautiful shots whereby it's just people had us just going with cattle and then they let the ambient noise play. So there's the moving, there's the bell. That thing just captures that particular environment with the cattle very well. The other thing is that when things actually start getting thick, you feel for the cattle, man. Yeah, you feel for the livestock, not just cattle. You feel for the livestock, and I thought that was pretty effective. They captured it very, very well. Now, apart from that, the people, the direction, wow, I like what they did with a particular character. There's something very, very sneaky. You never saw it coming. You never see it coming. But it was just, I thought that was a case of they were making something, they were preparing for the documentary. They had an idea of what they wanted to do, and then something happened, and then now the story rewrote itself. That's how I felt. I felt like at a certain point, the story just switched and rewrote itself. As you get to the end, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So I thought that was pretty effective in how they were able to give us an idea of these two lifestyles, these two groups, number one in terms of lifestyle, number two in terms of challenges, number three in terms of who they are. Identity, buzzword, just who they are. who they are, in how they live their lifestyle and stuff. So I thought they did a very good job of showing you that. Then they don't say that you lean towards this guy or this guy. No, they just present you with, here is the conflict, here is the two groups. What do you think? Make your own judgment. And then you think, oh, I lean towards this side. But then they introduce something that is so human. They humanize one particular group that you think to yourself, oh, come on, why would you do that at this particular point? I mean, I was already against these people, you know. Why would you present this in this? You know, it stimulates empathy in a very unexpected way. I had sniffles behind me, and the theater was very diverse. We had white people, black people, we had all type of group in the theater, and I could hear sniffles behind me. So I thought that was pretty effective. Now, one thing that left me emotionally drained after the movie was the circle of life. I talked about it in my article, I just touched on it. The circle of life, we've seen it in Lion King, whereby it's sensationalized. You know, it's presented like it's this grand thing, but it's animation, it's from Hollywood. The objective is to just tell a good story in order to make as much money as possible because it's Hollywood. Yeah, it's just put there just for the fun of it because it's an animated movie. So as much as you see the concept of the circle of life in the Lion King very, very well, it does not hit as hard as it hits in this particular documentary because that idea is presented as you jump into the third act. That idea is presented in such a natural way, and you look at everything that you've seen, and when something new is presented, wow, you look at it and it just, you know, you go back to heritage, you go back to the concept of the circle of life. And it reminded me of things like heritage family, what you do now, what impact will it have on the future, you know? What impact will it have, for example, if I was living there? What impact would what I do now have on the livestock, you know? What conflict would my, you know, children have to go through after, you know, years later, 50 years from now, 50 years from the day that you're dead? You know, heritage, family, concept like that. And it goes to show just how fragile we are as human beings. We just need one act of nature for everything to go down south. And that's what I saw with the story of these two communities. You just needed one small trigger to actually take everything to whatever, just to destroy everything and just have everything go absolutely bonkers. I mean, things get thick. And this is where now filmmaking comes in, whereby they use your basic, by the way, this documentary is the fundamental 3-act structure. If you're a filmmaker watching this is how a 3-act structure is supposed to be, whereby you introduce your character, you introduce the scenario, you introduce the setting, you introduce everything, then you escalate everything during the 2nd act, and then everything just goes into madness during the 3rd act. And the thing I like about this documentary, it does not have a resolution. As I said before, it does not have a resolution. Instead, they had an intervention. They had an intervention rather than a resolution. If you watch it, you'll understand it. So yeah, I thought this documentary was great. If there was something that I thought was wrong with the documentary, number one was, I thought the ending was kind of choppy. You know, it ended like 3 times. It felt like the ending is designed in such a way that you have that really, really heavy impact, emotionally draining moments that leave you, oh my gosh. You know, for a person like myself, I was so tired. And then I just felt that weight of those moments. You know, you walk out and I was just like, I need to get out of here because that was just so much. Anyway, you get that ending with that heavy emotional moment. And then you have another ending and then another ending. So these 2 blocks of ending feel like they can be removed or placed back. Actually, the documentary, there was a definitive moment I was like, this ends here. and then we go back to something else, and then we go back to something else, and I'm like, you did not need this. Actually, these two pieces can be removed, and you still have your documentary the way it was supposed to be. The idea of, there's a bit of politics, but there's something that happens during the end with a particular politician. I was like, bullshit, you're ruining it. This is the second reason I would complain about the documentary. You don't need to show that guy in the documentary. Yes, I know that it's important and it plays into the story, but you don't need that. I thought that cheapens everything. Once I saw that face, and I'm not talking, it's not a personal vendetta. You've already shown what politicians can actually do. You've already had a case study, and you've already explored one politician, and whatever happens to him happens to him. But then you introduce this other politician, and he's portrayed like, and they're politicians, they lie. So I was like, bullshit. You don't need this. Cut that bit out. You don't need that guy. Let it just be clean, because that doesn't really add anything, doesn't really add any weight. You feel, I don't trust politicians. So whatever he's saying in that documentary, for me, it's a lie. It's just a lie. They are always there to serve their own interest, political interest, and I thought that scene was kind of off, based on what had been presented. And so even during those moments, I like the fact that the documentary went to that part whereby it reminds you that these people are Kenyans, because after each year, after every 5 years, we have to queue, and in that queue, whether you have a conflict or not, you're on that queue. If you're a filmmaker, what you can learn from that is editing, pacing, use of sound, understanding when to use sound and not to use sound, direction a bit, because you know when to present. There's that thing of knowing when to present what is important. So I thought I did that very well. And the other thing is the fundamentals of filmmaking. Just be basic. Have your first act, second act, third act. The director and the producer had a word about the inspiration and why they actually did it, and the impact the conflict was having on the community. As a person who's just looking for entertainment, it's a documentary that can actually entertain you and actually make you feel something. Apart from making you feel something, there's something I forgot. Media. Yeah, you're sitting there, you're like, legacy media is dead, legacy media is gone. For you, it might be dead because you have a smartphone. Yeah, there are people out there. There's a scene with a single leaf of a newspaper. Yeah, a single leaf of a newspaper. And it has more importance to the people than, anything else in that community. A single leaf of newspaper has an impact on a community. And there are also scenes with television. There are a lot of familiar news anchor within the documentary. And these are just, good folks. They have stuff, but they still rely on the news. The news for them matters because they are out there. So as much as we claim that legacy media is dead, we should be very careful, because there are some people out there who actually rely and depend on legacy media. So the next movie, on Saturday, 19th of October, I got to see two very interesting movies. Number one was Shimoni. Shimoni is the story of Geoffrey, who is played by Justin Murithi. And he is an ex-convict who has to reinvent himself. After being in prison for 7 years, he's taken to a Catholic church in the shacks, in the rural areas. And so while there, he gets to meet all these dynamic characters, and then he gets to meet this character called Weru. Weru did something to them. Weru did something to him and his brother, and so now that just spirals him into this madness that he has to experience while in that particular village, because he used to be there as a kid and then he moved out, and so most people don't actually recognize him. So that's the story. Now, what did I like about it? One element that I liked about it is how they used shadows. It's a very... Now, you need to understand that Geoffrey is a brooding character. Yeah, by the way, perfect casting. Justin choosing to shave his head, and his mannerism convinces you that he is who the character wants him to be. I thought that was perfect casting. And his brooding is always angry. He's always on the edge. Now, the director told me that the idea of this particular story is that despite the fact that Geoffrey is out of prison, He's still in his own prison because of what happened to him, thanks to Weru. So now the way they are able to actually capture that with the cinematography, there's a lot of, basically the character is always in the dark, and the cinematographer plus the colorist, they did a very interesting thing with the color grading and the use of light. It's used very well. There are some frames that look absolutely beautiful, and this is the interesting thing that they did with Shimoni. They didn't go for the clean, spectacular look. They went for, because this is a rural area, and so the props, the location, some of the set design, I wouldn't call them set designs because they already exist. They feel authentic. Basically, this movie feels extremely authentic. If you've ever grown up in the rural area, especially the mountain, quotes, Kikuyu land, there are very, very many things that are familiar. There are a lot of things that look the way they look, because I've been to Kikuyu for a few times and I've seen a lot of things that actually translate very, very well in this particular movie. So there are a lot of authentic things that you see in this, from the lights to what they use to milk the cows, to the cows themselves. I thought the locations were very, very interesting. It's very green, and you get those wide shots of, the land. You get wide shots of maybe a forested area. There's one particular scene where a child is coming from school, and then Geoffrey is like stalking the child, and so you get a wide shot, and then you get the child coming, and there are trees. Then you see him pop up from one tree to another. I thought those kind of scenes were pretty interesting, and you get a lot of that. You get a lot of wide shots. You get a lot of shots that I think made this more of an art film, which is random everyday objects. Like that thing of electric meter. You just get a shot of that, and the camera holds on to that. Or you get a random shot of the water gutter that's usually in the house, but it's framed beautifully. And this goes to my next point. The framing, there's a lot of discipline in how they were framing a lot of the scenes. You may look at this and think, they're trying to capture the authenticity of where they're trying to capture. But when you look at it from a composition point of view, you can see there's a lot of details that is put into where the lights are, if it's at night. You can see a sense of symmetry in some scenes. There's a church scene that is pretty interesting, because church is usually divided into two. You have this side and this side. So sometimes they have wide shots that capture that idea of symmetry very well. There's also a lot of religious symbolism. I thought there was a lot of religious, especially with the Catholic. The core story of this particular movie is forgiveness. Actually, when I think about it, it's just all based on forgiveness, and the idea that these people are not able to. I won't go there. You have to see it for yourself. I'm sorry. Now, the thing that would make me recommend this movie to you is Martha. There are all these actors who are awesome. Familiar faces. There are a lot of familiar faces in this movie. Justin was awesome. Murichi is fantastic. He did a great job in his role. He sold it, and he also has the mannerism. I thought Beatrice was very, very good. I thought the father, the guy in the church, his relationship with Geoffrey and Martha was very, very interesting. It was an interesting dynamic. And then there's also Juma, who I also thought was very effective in presenting a very interesting scenario between the three characters. Let me explain. There's a character called Martha. For me, absolutely impressed by her performance. Her name is on the screen right now, her real name. I was absolutely impressed by how she became that character. Now, when I talked to the director told me something totally different, that they had to do a lot for her to become that. And that goes into, they had a language guy, a guy to actually, a linguistic expert to help her actually make the Kikuyu sound authentic. They had, I also liked the role that the costume designers had to play in transforming who she becomes, because she is. There's no way, at some point I was like, there's no way this person is an actor. She is from Kikuyu. She is that person. She fully embodies that person, and she becomes that particular person. Now, things get very interesting at a certain point during the third act, when things now, do I say it? No, I won't spoil it for you, but things get interesting, because as you follow her, she's this character. But at a particular point, she becomes something totally different. And I loved what they did. I love what the writing did with that particular character during that point. Now, what makes it interesting between that character and Mzee Juma, who is also another laid-back character you never see coming. He is, the way Mzee Juma is presented, you go like, you can almost see where the relationship is going. But then where the relationship goes versus where the Martha's relationship go, it just creates, the third act, I was like looking at these characters and I was like, yes, this is perfect. Yeah, this actually really works. The other thing that I liked, the other thing that I liked is that, like the Battle For Laikipia, I think there was discipline in using music. Yes, there's some soundtracks that don't really work. I thought they were a bit over the top. But for most part during the first act, they kind of step back from the soundtracks and they kind of, move back from, and that properly captures the tone of particular scenes. So I thought that was really good. Apart from that, yeah, I thought the costume designers actually really outdid themselves, because the father looks like a father. Apart from Sam's performance, apart from his demeanor as the pastor. I mean, oh my gosh, there's a scene that you have a particular character walking, you have 4 characters in a room trying to have a conversation about something. It's awkward, it's quiet, but then it makes sense. And then you have this father character trying to do something. And I thought that scene was, when I say it doesn't make sense until you see it. You understand? Yeah, until you see it, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But I thought some scenes like that were actually really interesting. So the location was good. The set designers and framing, when you mix that, they did an interesting job. The movie, if there was a word that I could use to summarize this particular movie, it would be authentic. It's a very authentic experience. It's a very authentic look. It's a very authentic feel in terms of language, in terms of framing, in terms of the props, in terms of the shots, in terms of some of the locations. So apart from that, what did I not like about this movie? Because it's definitely not perfect. I thought the angle of the sexual abuse was kind of off. Actually, it was, and this goes to pacing. I thought, this is an art film. Yeah, and the director was like, this is a balance between an art film and the normal and your typical movies, which is just to make money and stuff. Yeah, for entertainment. It just tries to balance that, because there's also a lot of humor within this movie. But I thought, I struggled with the pacing. Yeah, there are moments I was like, come on, let's move on. And that actually happens within the sexual abuse arc, because I thought it dragged a lot. What I really liked was the idea of this ex-convict trying to get back into the society, and what happened to the society. Because let me tell you, the third act becomes very interesting because of a certain reaction after something happens. That's when I went like, yes, I'm loving this. I'm loving how all these characters have been flipped. I'm loving how we are exploring the true nature of who we are and when we actually know the truth, So I thought that was interesting. When you go to the sexual abuse stuff, I was like, oh man. Then there were some subplots that were introduced randomly. We have Joffrey who did something. We know at a certain point what he did. We know what happened, but we don't know what happened. We know the reason that he was jailed. We know the reason that he was jailed, but we don't know what happened. Now, being vague about that is okay. I love the fact that you can actually do that in a film. It's very bold to actually do that. But what I did not like is that there was something that was introduced in the second act. I was like, why? It's 2 small things. Actually, it's the third act. 2 small things were introduced, and I was like, this is the wrong time to introduce this. You could have even given us a hint at the beginning, because there's something they do with a photograph, and then there's a callback to that at the very end. A scene at the very end. I thought that was clever. But they don't do that with those small 2 things and the information behind that. So we are learning, oh my gosh, we are learning about that very late in the film, and I thought that just complicated everything, because we have this guy trying to go back into society. We have this new thing that has been introduced, which is still connected to why he was in jail. Then we have this sexual abuse thing also happening. So there are a lot of these things that are happening at the same time, And I'm like, I wish you could have just made it a bit leaner, focused on one thing, focused on, I think the ex-convict trying to get back to society is a very interesting story. I think that should have been the way. Now, yes, it makes sense. I'm not saying that it does not make sense with the sexual abuse story. It does, because there's a clear vision. There's a clear vision and there's a clear structure. You can actually follow from A to Z. There's a story. But because of that, you get those slow moments within the film. You get those heavily, emotionally investing moments within the film. The ending is gut-punching. And I just felt like, man, you had something interesting, and now you've moved from then, you've moved from that to, and that works for an art film. What they had with the ending works perfectly with an art film. It's absolutely perfect. And the direction that Geoffrey's character is taken at the end, you'll understand he escalates, but not in a positive way, in a totally different way. And I thought that made sense. But for me, I was there going like, I want to see more of these people, man. Yeah, I want to see more of what these people have to say. I want to see them put together in a room with this guy. I want to see that argument. When the pastor is in the middle and is saying this group versus this group, you should do this, and they're like, no, we need to do this. That I thought was interesting. Anyway, the other thing that I struggled with was the character of Beatrice. She plays a big role within the story. But again, there are some things that are introduced about her going to Nairobi and stuff, somewhere in the middle, that I was like, okay, so what's going on here? There are small moments like that I kept asking myself, so what's happening with this character? Then it comes to the end and you realize that she was used to enable something happen. She's there to elevate Geoffrey's arc. But for herself as a character, she's just there to serve that other particular character. She doesn't feel like properly fleshed out. Apart from that, what else did I have? Yeah, the runtime plus the pacing, I thought it was perfectly paced for an art film, but poorly paced for the ordinary film. So basically, that's Shimoni. It's a very it's an authentic Kenyan experience. Let me put it that way. Never liked the sexual abuse stuff, but I love the ex-convict stuff, and I love the casting. The casting is fantastic. The casting put in good costume designers, put in good writing, and put in a very strong sense of direction. There's a proper A to Z. There's a proper flow of events. I thought that was perfect. Anyway, that's Shimoni. Next, I want to finish off a very quick talk on Mystery of Waza. Mystery of Waza is an animated movie from Cameroon. It's a 2D movie. That was a surprise, because when I think African animation, I always think about 3D. I always think about movies that focus on the 3D element, because it's easier to animate in 3D than in 2D. So I love the fact that this is a proper full feature film that is actually a 2D movie. And the fact that it actually makes sense. Makes sense in terms of there's a clear structure from A to Z. You don't get lost. The character design is out of this world, because the characters look very, very good. And the characters are easy to distinguish. Each character is unique. One in personality, two in design, three in color play. How they played with their colors in terms of skin tone, in terms of clothing, in terms of their outfits, basically. So they are very distinct characters. Now the story is about Abdul specifically, because he has to go find his cousin who is missing. And it so happens that him and the cousin have an interesting connection. And so the thing that I absolutely love is how they were able to bring in African mythology into the whole story. They have a very good, fantastic opening sequence whereby they talk about this mythology about the moon and these women who used to pound I don't know what. It's something to do with Cameroonian mythology. So that introduction was perfect, and what it leads to in the third act reminds me of Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider without the action, without the puzzles, just that format of a mystery, whereby there's someone missing, you have to go to find someone missing, and then you find hidden things, and those hidden things evolved into something else, artifacts and stuff. It's just an adventure movie that actually is far more than just a family movie. And there are funny moments. These characters are cool to follow. I thought the idea to do some 3D work with 2D shader, if you've never animated, you'll not see it. You can identify the 3D elements that have 2D shaders. Basically, it's 3D, but it has been, shaded like like a 2D, scene. The train scene in particular, that was 3D, I could tell. Apart from that, as I said, the story is very, very interesting. The character design and the environment design is very, very clean, which makes for easy animation, and it gives this animated movie, would I call it an identity? No, it's not different. It's not like Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. It just looks good. It just looks good. It looks clean. There's a competence in terms of the animation, the design, the motion design, and how when they choose to cut. I could see some things. Most people will not see them, but as an animator, you could see some things, some shortcuts. But generally, this is awesome. Yeah, the fact that it's 2D and it's a full feature film, I thought that was pretty awesome. The fact that there was a story that has 3 proper acts, and they paid a lot of attention to the characters. By that I mean, like, the first and the better part of the second act, they used them to just introduce the characters and give us an idea of who they are, where they come from, what their challenges are, who they actually aspire to be, and why this story makes sense for them to be where they are during the third act. So I thought that was pretty cool. Some things that I did not like, I thought that, again, it's a festival film, so the theme, okay, I don't have a problem with festival films. Sometimes I feel that they lean too much on themes. I feel that they lean too much on saying something that you feel them getting lost at some certain points. We have an albino character in the movie, and you have moments whereby the character is literally telling you the challenges that they go through. You need to pick this, you need to take this, you need to take. There are moments that you see the movie literally telling you how albinos are treated. There's another angle about poaching, which was small, but it made sense for it to happen because after that leads to a particular character. But that whole idea of poaching, I was rolling my eyes because I was like, oh, here we go again. You just can't go without touching on these things. But again, festival movie, or generally, I'm going to say this. I always get that feeling that in order to make a movie in Africa, you need to have a theme. You need to talk about something. You need to tackle something. Why is it so hard to just make a movie for the sake of making a movie? Why can't you just make, if you're an animator, I like what Terrastorm did. It was 3D. But I like that idea of people making movies for the sake of making movies. You don't need to make a movie and have a message in the movie. Okay, the albino character I get, but you see her arc, what we're introduced to her, she's this martial artist. And I thought it would have been bolder if the filmmakers decided that we are not going to touch anything on albino. We are not going to explain it. We are just going to hint on it, but we're not going to touch it. We are going to just elevate her as this badass character who knows martial art. And we're going to use her in particular scenes to actually take out some few people with some really good kung fu moves. Yes, you have that, but you don't have enough of that because it's established early on that she's the badass. So yeah, I thought that was pretty weak. But generally, the fact that this is 2D and you also have those really good moments with the characters, I thought it was really well done. Clean environments, good animation, and the African mythology just changes everything. So the NBO Festival is happening. Make time to actually go see these movies. They're pretty awesome. And yeah, I'll be talking more about some movies. I'll probably go watch a few short movies and then I'll talk about them. But for now, thanks for watching this. I know it's a long video. I know very few people are here, but I had to do what I had to do. And basically that's it. Remember to always watch what you enjoy. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, it's just a button, you just have to press it. Thanks for watching this. Adios.